video opens with the faint hum of a courtroom, the sound of papers rustling, a clock ticking, and footsteps echoing softly against marble floors. A subtitle fades in, Providence Municipal Court, 9:15 a.m. The camera pans across the courtroom, police officers, a clerk typing quietly, and a small group of people waiting nervously for their cases to be called. At the center sits Judge Frank Caprio, his familiar warmth balanced by a deep sense of authority. He flips through a few papers, looks up, and nods at the clerk. "Next case, please," he says gently. The clerk clears her throat. "Your Honor, next up is Mrs. Eleanor Brooks." The courtroom doors creak open. A small elderly woman, maybe in her late 70s, walks in slowly. Her steps careful, one hand clutching an old faded purse, the other holding the edge of the bench for balance. Her gray hair is neatly tied back. Her eyes are kind but tired. The kind of tired that doesn't come from age alone, but from years of carrying silent pain. Caprio watches her carefully. His face softens immediately. He always had a way of reading people before they even spoke. "Good morning, ma'am," he says warmly, leaning slightly forward. "Take your time." She nods, her voice fragile but clear. "Good morning, Your Honor." She places her purse gently on the podium, opens a small folded paper, her ticket, and smooths it out with trembling hands. The courtroom is unusually quiet. Even the clerk pauses her typing. Caprio glances at the citation. He says softly, adjusting his glasses. "Parking violation, outside St. Mary's Hospital." The woman nods. "Yes, sir." "That's right." There's a pause, the kind of silence that feels heavier than words. Caprio looks up again. "Were you visiting someone that day?" Her lips quiver slightly before she answers. "No, Your Honor, I wasn't visiting." She hesitates. "I was saying goodbye." The courtroom air seems to shift. Caprio blinks, confused for a moment. "Goodbye?" She takes a deep breath, steadying her shaking voice. "Yes, that was the day my husband passed away." A few people in the back lower their heads. One of the officers glances toward her, visibly moved. Caprio's expression changes instantly. His usual calm demeanor gives way to something more tender. He leans forward, his voice softer now. "I'm very sorry to hear that, ma'am." She nods, a faint tear rolling down her cheek. "I didn't even realize where I parked, Your Honor. I just ran in. They said he didn't have much time left." She pauses, swallowing hard. "When I came back outside, there was a ticket on the windshield." Her voice breaks. "That ticket was the last thing I saw before they took him away." The courtroom remains silent. You can almost hear her breathing. Caprio's hand slowly lowers the paper he's holding, his voice barely above a whisper. "Mrs. Brooks, I can only imagine how difficult that must have been." She gives a small, sad smile. "It's been 6 years, Your Honor. But I still have that ticket. I keep it in my Bible." Caprio looks surprised. "You kept it?" "Yes," she nods, "because it reminds me that life doesn't stop, no matter how much you lose. I just never had the courage to come back here until today." Caprio leans back in his chair, visibly moved. The camera focuses on his eyes. He's trying not to show too much emotion, but it's there. He exhales deeply. "You didn't come here to fight the fine, did you?" She shakes her head slowly. "No, Your Honor. I just wanted to talk to someone, to tell someone what happened." A hush falls over the courtroom. The clerk subtly wipes her eye. Caprio sits quietly for a long moment. He removes his glasses, folds them, and sets them on the bench. His eyes glisten as he looks at her. "You know, Mrs. Brooks," he begins, voice thick with emotion, "I've been sitting in this chair for over 30 years. I've heard thousands of stories. But I can tell you this. Some stories don't belong in a courtroom. They belong in the heart." She smiles faintly, a tear catching the light. "Thank you, Your Honor. That means more than you know." Caprio nods slowly. "No, thank you for reminding us all what love looks like when it lasts beyond life itself." The shot lingers on her face, lined, fragile, but full of grace. Then on Caprio, silent, reflective, his eyes shimmering under the courtroom lights. For a few seconds, no one moves. No one speaks. Then softly, the sound of the clock ticking fades in again. Tick, tick, tick. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. In that quiet courtroom, two hearts, one grieving, one understanding, found peace in each other's kindness. The courtroom stays quiet for a few seconds longer. That kind of silence that feels sacred. Then Judge Frank Caprio clears his throat gently and tries to bring the focus back to the paperwork in front of him. He picks up the citation once again, the thin slip of paper that started it all. "Mrs. Brooks," he says softly, "let's take a look at what exactly happened here." The woman nods and clasps her hands together, her fingers fidgeting nervously. Caprio reads aloud, "You were cited for parking in a no parking zone outside St. Mary's Hospital. Fine amount, $50. He looks up, his tone still calm and caring. "Do you recall what happened that morning?" The woman exhales deeply, her voice trembling as she begins to speak. "Yes, Your Honor. My husband, Robert, had been sick for months. That morning he wasn't breathing right. I called the ambulance, but I was so afraid they wouldn't reach in time, so I drove him myself." The courtroom listens quietly. Even the sound of typing from the clerk's desk has stopped. "I didn't even think about parking. I just stopped right outside the doors and helped them carry him in. I stayed there all day. I held his hand until they said—" She stops for a moment, wiping away tears that she tries to hide. Caprio leans forward gently. "Take your time, Mrs. Brooks." She nods, composing herself. "They said he was gone." The words hang in the air, heavy, slow, final. Caprio lowers his eyes. His voice is almost a whisper now. "I'm so sorry." She offers a fragile smile, the kind people give when they have accepted pain as part of life. And he was a good man, Judge. 47 years together. We raised two sons, but after he passed, they moved away. California and Texas. I don't blame them. Everyone has their own life. Her eyes glisten. I just wish I had someone to talk to. That's why I came here today." Caprio takes a moment. His hands are folded on the bench. He nods slowly. "You remind me of my own mother, Mrs. Brooks. She always used to say, 'A heavy heart can't heal in silence.'" The courtroom stays silent as he continues, softly. "I think today you spoke what's been in your heart for a long time." The woman smiles faintly. "You know, I wasn't even going to come, Your Honor. I thought, what difference would it make? But when I saw you on TV, I thought maybe you'd understand." Caprio chuckles gently, a small human sound that cuts through the tension. "Well, I don't know about TV," he says, smiling kindly, "but I do try to understand." The woman's shoulders relax a little for the first time. She wipes her tears and looks up at him. "My husband used to watch your show, Judge. He said you had the kindest eyes." Caprio's expression softens. He presses his lips together and nods slowly. "Your husband sounds like a wise man." The courtroom watches this quiet exchange. A conversation not just between a judge and a citizen, but between two people who've both known love and loss. Caprio looks back at the ticket one last time, then at her. "Mrs. Brooks, I see here the fine hasn't been paid. Is there a reason you didn't take care of it sooner?" Her eyes drop again. "I couldn't bring myself to. Every time I looked at it, I remembered that day. The hospital, the goodbye. So I tucked it in my Bible and prayed that someday, maybe, someone would understand." Caprio sits back, taking in her words. He removes his glasses again, rubbing his eyes. The camera lingers on his face, emotional, quiet, reflective. "You know something?" he says softly. "I think you already paid far more than $50, ma'am. You've paid with years of love and loss." The woman looks down, overcome with emotion. He continues, voice breaking slightly. "Some people come here angry, demanding fairness. But you came here searching for peace, and I think today you found a little bit of it." The courtroom remains completely still. Even the usual chatter and footsteps from the hallway outside are gone. Then the judge shifts the papers aside, leans slightly forward and says, Mrs. Brooks, this court is not just about laws, it's about people. And when I look at you, I see a person who's already carried more than her share of burdens. So I'll tell you what, this fine is dismissed. The woman gasps softly. Her hands fly to her mouth. Oh, Your Honor, I didn't come for that. I didn't. He gently interrupts. I know, ma'am, but sometimes doing the right thing means giving a little grace. The camera cuts to a wide shot, the courtroom watching silently. You can see small smiles, quiet tears, even the police officer in the corner nodding respectfully. Caprio looks back at her, his voice trembling slightly. And I want you to do me one favor. She blinks through tears. Anything, Your Honor. When you go home tonight, talk to your husband again. Tell him that Judge Caprio said he married a wonderful woman. The courtroom breaks into soft applause, gentle, heartfelt. The woman smiles, tears streaming freely down her cheeks. Thank you. I will, Your Honor. I will, Caprio nods, his lips trembling just a little. He tries to speak, but can't. He takes a deep breath, lowers his head for a moment, then looks back up with watery eyes. Sometimes justice isn't about punishment or fines. It's about listening, about seeing the story behind the mistake. The camera pans to the courtroom door as the woman slowly walks out. Her posture straighter now, her steps lighter. Caprio watches her leave, his face calm, but his eyes glistening. As the door closes, he whispers quietly to himself, This job, it teaches you law, but it's the people who teach you love. Soft piano music swells as the scene fades to black. The courtroom has begun to settle, but something about Mrs. Brooks' expression tells Judge Caprio that her story isn't over. Even though the case has technically been dismissed, she lingers, her eyes downcast, hands still trembling slightly on the podium. Caprio notices. He leans forward, tone gentle but curious. Mrs. Brooks, is there something else you'd like to say? The woman looks up slowly, eyes shimmering with unshed tears. There's hesitation in her face, as if she's been holding something inside for far too long. Your Honor, she whispers, there's something I've never told anyone, not even my sons. The courtroom falls into silence again. Caprio straightens in his chair, his expression soft but attentive. Take your time, he says kindly. This is a safe place. She nods, taking a shaky breath. Her voice cracks as she continues. That day, the day Robert passed away, I wasn't supposed to drive. Caprio tilts his head slightly. You weren't? She shakes her head. No, Your Honor. My license had expired 2 months earlier. I was afraid to renew it. My eyesight isn't what it used to be. I told Robert I'd call an ambulance, but he looked at me and said, She pauses, her lips trembling. He said, Ellie, I trust you more than anyone. Please, just take me. Caprio blinks, the weight of her words sinking in. The woman continues, each word trembling with guilt. When he stopped breathing halfway there, I panicked. I didn't know if I was driving right. I didn't even remember parking. I just ran inside screaming for help. She wipes her tears quickly, embarrassed. I've carried that guilt ever since, that maybe if I'd driven faster or called an ambulance, he'd still be here. Caprio exhales quietly. His eyes soften with compassion. Mrs. Brooks, he says in a low, sincere voice, you did what any loving wife would do. You made the best choice you could in the hardest moment of your life, but she shakes her head, her voice breaking. No, Your Honor. It's not just that she looks down again, clutching her purse tightly. When I got that parking ticket, I felt like it was a punishment. Like the universe was saying, this is your fault. And I believed it. For years, the courtroom is absolutely still. Even the clerk has tears in her eyes now. Caprio places his hands gently on the bench, speaking softly. Mrs. Brooks, the universe doesn't punish love. It just reminds us of how precious it is. She looks up at him, her eyes searching his face for reassurance. Do you really think so? He nods. I do. The woman exhales shakily. Then after a long pause, she says something that takes everyone by surprise. Every night since then, I've parked my car in that same spot. Outside the hospital, Caprio's brows lift slightly. You still go there? She nods. I sit there for a few minutes. I look at the entrance, and I talk to him. I tell him about my day. I tell him I miss him. I think the nurses know me by now. They just smile and wave. She lets out a sad laugh through her tears. Sometimes I see other wives rushing in with their husbands, and I whisper a prayer for them too. The judge's face softens even more. He's clearly fighting emotion now, his lips pressed together, eyes glistening. For a moment he looks down, gathering himself, then says quietly, Mrs. Brooks, that is one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard. The woman smiles faintly. I didn't mean to make anyone sad, Your Honor. I just needed to tell someone. I needed to stop feeling like that ticket was a curse. Caprio leans forward. You did the right thing by coming here. Sometimes forgiveness doesn't come from a judge. It comes from the moment you let go of guilt. She nods slowly, tears falling freely now. You're right. I think I just needed someone to tell me that. Caprio's voice softens even more. You know, Mrs. Brooks, I've always believed that love never dies. It just changes form. And in your case, I think your husband's love lives right there. He points gently to her heart, where it's always been. She smiles through her tears. Thank you, Your Honor. You've given me peace for a few seconds. Caprio can't speak. He takes off his glasses and presses the bridge of his nose, visibly emotional. Sometimes people come to court looking for justice, but others come looking for closure. And in that search, they remind us that compassion can heal wounds the law never could. The shot widens. The courtroom sits in silence, every face touched, every heart softened. Caprio finally looks up again. His voice is barely above a whisper. Mrs. Brooks, this court owes you no penalty, only gratitude. Thank you for reminding us that love is the only thing that survives loss. The woman nods, holding back a sob. And thank you, Your Honor, for listening. Caprio gives her a small nod, his eyes glistening once more. Anytime, ma'am. Anytime. As she turns to leave, the camera follows her. Slow motion, soft piano in the background. She pauses at the courtroom door, looks back once more, and says softly, Robert would have liked you, Judge. Caprio smiles gently, eyes misty. Then I hope I made him proud today. She nods, smiling tearfully, before disappearing through the door. The camera lingers on Caprio, sitting silently, lost in thought. For a few long seconds, he doesn't move. Then he exhales deeply, looking down at his empty desk. No papers, no fines, just quiet reflection. We never truly lose the people we love. We just carry their stories within us until someone finally listens. In a world full of rules, sometimes the greatest judgment is compassion. The courtroom is silent. No gavel sound, no shuffling papers. Just the faint hum of air conditioning and the echo of Mrs. Brooks's last words lingering in the air. Judge Frank Caprio sits back, hands folded, eyes lowered. It's not just another case. It's a moment that has touched something deep inside him, the human part that exists beyond the robe, beyond the bench. He takes a slow breath, his voice calm but heavy with emotion. Mrs. Brooks, I've heard thousands of cases in this courtroom, but very few have ever touched me the way your story just did. The old woman looks at him, eyes still glassy but gentler now, as if she's finally unburdened herself after years of silence. Caprio continues, his words deliberate, his tone reflective. You didn't come here asking for mercy. You came here carrying guilt, a guilt no law can punish, and no court can measure. He pauses, glancing toward the ceiling as if searching for words big enough to hold the emotion in the room. You remind me, he says softly, that justice isn't always about rules. Sometimes it's about understanding why people break them. The camera cuts to Mrs. Brooks, her hands gripping the podium, shoulders trembling slightly. Then back to Caprio, his eyes watery, his jaw tight. That parking ticket, he says, wasn't a punishment. It was life, trying to bring you here, so that you could finally forgive yourself. He leans forward, his voice lowering, almost like he's talking directly to her heart. You didn't fail your husband. You fought for him. You loved him when he needed you most. And that, Mrs. Brooks, is something no one can take away. A tear escapes her eye. She wipes it gently, whispering a quiet, broken, "Thank you, Your Honor." The courtroom clerk looks away, trying not to cry. Even the officer standing by the door shifts uncomfortably, swallowing hard. Caprio takes off his glasses and sets them on the bench. His tone changes. Softer now, like a grandfather speaking to a loved one. "You know," he says with a faint, trembling smile, "I lost someone too, years ago, and for a long time I carried the same guilt. I thought maybe I could have done more, but one day I realized something important." He looks up at her, eyes glistening. "The people we love never ask us to be perfect. They just want us to be there. And you were." The camera lingers on his face. The judge, a man who's seen it all, is fighting to keep his composure. "That's why today," he continues, "this court finds no reason to fine you. But more importantly, this court asks you to forgive yourself." Mrs. Brooks exhales, a trembling breath escaping her lips, the kind that carries years of pain and relief in one single moment. Caprio gives a gentle nod. "And I'll tell you something else, Mrs. Brooks. If love could pay for parking, your heart has already paid 1,000 times over." A quiet, emotional laugh escapes from her, and for the first time, there's light in her eyes. "Thank you, Judge," she whispers. "I think I really needed to hear that." Caprio smiles softly. "And I think we all did." The room stays still. No applause, no music yet, just silence, the kind that follows something real. Then Caprio turns slightly toward the camera, his voice shifting from judge to human being, the voice that speaks to everyone watching. "Ladies and gentlemen," he says gently, "every day people walk into this courtroom with fines, tickets, violations, but what they really carry is life. Behind every case, there's a story. Behind every law, there's a person, and behind every mistake, there's almost always love, loss, or fear." He pauses. His words echo. Soft piano fades in. "I hope when we see someone struggling, we stop asking, 'What did they do wrong?' and start asking, 'What have they been through?'" He looks down at his bench again, thoughtful, emotional. "That's the kind of justice I believe in." He puts his glasses back on, voice trembling slightly but warm. "Mrs. Brooks, you're free to go. But before you do, promise me something." She looks up, curious. "Promise me," he says, smiling faintly, "that the next time you visit your husband, you'll park without fear." A tearful laugh escapes her as she nods. "I promise." Caprio smiles. "Good. That's the best verdict I can give today." She steps away slowly, wiping her face, a faint smile of peace replacing the pain that once lived there. The courtroom watches her leave, quietly, respectfully. Caprio sits back again, staring at the empty space where she stood moments ago, his voice barely above a whisper. Sometimes the hardest part of being human is forgiving ourselves. In that room, no laws were rewritten, no grand gestures were made, but something profound happened. A woman forgave herself, and a judge reminded us all that compassion is the truest form of justice. Text on screen appears. In the end, kindness doesn't just change verdicts, it heals hearts. The courtroom is empty now. The lights are dim. The echoes of the day's emotions still hang in the air. Silent, invisible, but heavy. Judge Frank Caprio sits alone behind his bench. His robe is slightly loosened, glasses resting beside the stack of papers he hasn't touched in the last 20 minutes. He isn't thinking about fines or legal codes. He's thinking about Mrs. Brooks, the fragile woman who walked into his courtroom burdened by guilt and walked out carrying peace. The faint sound of a clock ticking fills the silence. Caprio leans back in his chair, exhaling softly, almost like a sigh of relief and realization mixed together. His voice quiet and thoughtful. "You spend decades behind this bench, hearing stories of people's mistakes, and then someone like her comes along and reminds you that not every mistake is wrong. Sometimes it's just Human, he pauses. The camera slowly zooms in, capturing his gentle eyes glistening with reflection. When she spoke about her husband, he continues softly, it wasn't about the parking ticket. It was about love, the kind of love that makes us do foolish things and then punishes us with guilt long after. He smiles faintly, looking toward the empty witness stand. And yet in her pain, she showed grace. That's something rare these days. In that courtroom, two lives touched for a brief moment. A judge and a woman, strangers by law, but bound by something deeper, compassion. Cut to a visual. Caprio standing by the window of his chambers, the evening sun painting his face in soft gold. Every person who walks into this courtroom, as he says, brings a lifetime of stories behind them. We see the charges, the violations, the rules broken, but we don't see the sleepless nights, the hospital rooms, the losses. He lowers his head, almost whispering. Maybe that's where real justice begins, not in punishment, but in understanding. He walks toward a framed photograph on his desk, a younger Caprio with his late father, smiling proudly outside an old courthouse. He picks it up, eyes softening. My father once told me, he murmurs, Frankie, when you sit in that chair one day, remember that everyone who stands before you has already been judged by life. Your job isn't to judge them again, it's to listen. He places the photo back gently. I think he was right. In every verdict Judge Caprio gives, there's a piece of humanity, a reminder that compassion doesn't weaken justice, it defines it. Montage of Caprio in past moments, comforting a crying defendant, smiling gently, pausing before his decisions. Caprio turns off the light above his bench. The camera lingers as he slowly gathers his papers, his robe brushing the floor as he walks out. But before leaving, he stops, turns to look back at the empty courtroom one more time. You know, he says quietly to himself, when she said her husband would have told her not to blame herself, I realized something. He leans against the bench. We all carry ghosts of the people we've lost. Some whisper in our hearts to move on, others to forgive ourselves. Maybe that's their way of loving us, even after they're gone. He smiles faintly, his eyes distant, lost in thought but peaceful. Mrs. Brooks came to pay a fine. Instead, she paid her sorrow. And Judge Caprio, the man known for his fairness, gave something rarer than justice, forgiveness. Mrs. Brooks walking out of the courthouse, sunlight touching her face. Caprio closing his chamber door quietly behind him, the American flag outside fluttering in the wind. The piano melody deepens, more emotional now, almost tearful. In a world where judgment comes easy, says the narrator, it takes strength to choose kindness. And maybe that's what the world needs more of. People willing to understand before they condemn. Caprio placing his hand gently on his bench, looking toward the audience, as if speaking directly to you. Because someday, when life puts us on trial, we'll pray for the same mercy we refuse to give others. Then the final line, Caprio's voice returns one last time. Justice isn't what we do for others. It's what we remind ourselves to be. Kindness may not erase mistakes, but it heals hearts that never stop trying.